Have you heard the gossip on Hashgraph? Well, welcome back to New York City. Commentary from the SEC. Industry viewpoints on Hashgraph. Some other news and a big update at the end of this video. So, with all that said, cue the music. What is he talking about? And who am I? That's a secret you obviously know. You know you like me. Hashgraph, Hashgraph. Hello everyone, it's the Gossip Guy here, and we're back again for another weekly gossip in the world powered by Hashgraph. But before we dive into this episode, I wanted to take the opportunity to remind you of the Gossip Group's Discord server that myself and some other members of the Hashgraph community recently announced last week. The goal of this Discord server is to provide another resource to the growing Hashgraph community in order to openly discuss or gossip about Hashgraph and its growing ecosystem. Ultimately, we're trying to strengthen the Hashgraph community by developing a chat server around the Gossip Guy's content. So I hope you can join us in our community. Okay, with that out of the way, kicking things off, we go outside of the world powered by Hashgraph, but potentially has an impact on cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technologies overall. Probably one of the biggest news headlines from this past week was the recent commentary in respects to whether or not Ethereum represents a security that was made by William Hinman, the director of the Division of Corporate Finance at the United States Securities and Exchange Commission at the Yahoo All Markets Conference. To quote Director Hinman, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, and its decentralized structure, current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions. Well, this looks to be good news, and it was delivered against the backdrop of questions amongst the cryptocurrency community as to how the U.S. federal securities laws apply to digital assets, and specifically whether crypto assets constitute securities subjected to registration and disclosure requirements under U.S. securities laws. As part of his speech, Director Hinman expressly noted that virtual currencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum are not securities due to the underlying software platforms being sufficiently decentralized and sufficiently functional. This represents the first time that a high-ranking SEC official has publicly indicated that virtual currencies other than Bitcoin do not constitute a security. However, one key point that stood out to me from Director Hinman's speech was the framework that the SEC considers when assessing whether a digital asset is offered as an investment contract and thus a security. This includes the role that a third party, whether a person, entity, or group, plays in driving expectations of an investment return, and whether the economic substance of the transaction indicates that the digital asset truly functions more like a consumer item and less like a security. While it should be qualified that Director Hinman's speech represented his personal viewpoints only and not those of the commissions and staff of the SEC, the views help provide some regulatory clarification and generally represents positive momentum for cryptocurrencies and digital assets overall in the eyes of the regulatory bodies. So, you're probably asking yourself, Gossip Guy, what does this mean to Hedera Hashgraph? Well, I wouldn't go out there celebrating just yet. Although Director Hinman's statements, while instructive, didn't represent a final ruling from the SEC, as many from the crypto community have commented. We'll have to wait till formal guidance, rules, and laws are made before we know the SEC's true position as to whether cryptocurrencies represent securities. As many of us know, this can take up to several months and possibly years before something is officially announced. So for all of us in the community, we really don't know exactly how the SEC is going to view a utility token offering such as Hedera Hashgraph. With all this said, we'll likely see the Hedera Hashgraph team continuing to pursue the token offering approach that they have previously laid out. Basically, the institutional investor sale followed by an accredited investor sale, but with no retail investor crowd sale. Yet, as it's been noted before, there may be opportunities for the community to receive tokens as part of testing of the network overall. However, all of this surrounding Hedera Hashgraph's token offering could all change if the SEC comes out with more firm guidance by the end of this year. For now, we'll have to stay posted for further developments. Moving on, also featured this week was some additional coverage and commentary from crypto market data firm Brave New Coin and crypto VC fund DNA. Both articles provided a general overview of the Hedera Hashgraph platform and some of its associated attributes, such as the governance model, open review of the source code, and other aspects of the development of the Hedera Hashgraph consensus algorithm. Some items that stood out to me were, in the Brave New Coin article, there was coverage over the Hedera Hashgraph ICO process, but also made mention of the potential ICOs coming from some of the projects announced within the Hashgraph ecosystem. The article also provided some commentary over the distributed versus decentralized nature of the platform and compared Hedera Hashgraph potentially to the R3 Corda blockchain. For those that don't know, R3 is a distributed ledger being developed for the benefit of financial services firms. The article also wraps up by providing some final comparisons to the EOS platform, which recently went live with their mainnet earlier this week. As for the DNA article, it primarily focuses around some commentary provided by co-founders Matt Harmon and Dr. Lehman Baird that reinforce the perceived benefits of their invention. We also note that DNA is an investor in Hedera Hashgraph based on the commentary that Hedera Hashgraph is one of their portfolio companies. So, as I mentioned before, these were some pretty interesting articles, so I definitely recommend that you take a read, and I've also left links to them in the description down below. And before we wrap up here, I wanted to quickly go over some other developments that I came across this past week. This includes an announcement for another project announcing their plans to join the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem. Now, unfortunately, there hasn't been any formal details released regarding this project. However, the gossip is that the project has something to do with a real estate funding platform being built on Hedera Hashgraph. Next, a video circulated from the community in New Zealand of Hashgraph running on a Raspberry Pi. This was less than a 30-second long video. However, the key point is that someone was able to run the current version of the SDK on a device such as a Raspberry Pi, demonstrating that Hashgraph can be run on a lower capacity CPU. Next, and once again, CEO and co-founder Matt Harmon was featured in another interview, this time with popular podcaster Jay Kim. For the most part, this interview covered some of the topics that many of us have heard before. However, towards the end of the interview, Matt commented that one of the projects announced within the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem is close to completing their application within the testnet. And lastly, the Hedera Hashgraph team was also busy publishing their own video content, which included a video from last month's Crypto Invest conference covering women in blockchain and featured Simi from the developer advocacy team. Also, there was a video from Dr. Lehman Baird providing the overview of the evolution of distributed ledger technologies. You should check out these videos and everything else we've covered in this video when you get the chance. So that's it. That's all the gossip that I had for you this week. But before we wrap up this episode, and probably some of the biggest news coming from the Hedera Hashgraph team, was the announcement of the Hedera 18 Developer Conference. This will take place on October 15th through the 17th, and will also include a distributed hackathon. Now, we've been hearing about this developer conference over the past couple months, so it's very nice to see that this has been formally put together. If you're interested, make sure to register, and we'll also plan on providing some further coverage on this in next week's episode. And wrapping up here, as a quick update, we're pushing close to 1,000 subscribers, So if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and also turn on notifications in order to stay posted on further news and developments coming from the Hashgraph ecosystem. Also, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, be sure to join us on the Gossip Group's Discord server in order to continue our discussions about Hashgraph. With all this said, this is the Gossip Guy signing out. Thanks for watching.